Just getting ready to eat some lunch. Hey YouTube, ValleyGirl5678 here, and it's time for another album review. Today we are going to be talking about this new Billie Eilish record, Hit Me Hard and Soft. This is the third LP from Gen Z pop star Billie Eilish and her music making partner, her bro Phineas, following her 2021 sophomore LP, Happier Than Ever, that showed Billie getting older. There were a lot of great tracks on that album, but overall the project did seem to lack clear direction and aesthetic, was a bit bloated, and more than anything felt like a collection of songs and not necessarily a body of work. This project, however, is her tightest project yet at only 10 tracks, yet it spans about 45 minutes, meaning each song on here is fully fleshed out and very much stands on its own. And further, what's really impressive about this project is that it's one thing to make a bunch of great songs and put them all together in a track listing to create an album, kind of like what Happier Than Ever was, but it's another thing to create a bunch of great songs that are all in relation to one another and work with each other to create a solid and clear project. And that's what this album is. I'd say it does that even more than her first album did, which is saying something because that was obviously a fully cohesive project. For example, the opening track Skinny, which is a classic Billie track, from the melodies to the vocals to the subject matter, ends with a melancholic violin moment that is actually the melody of the chorus of track 6, The Greatest. And those two songs obviously, talk about a similar subject. Which brings me to the fact that The Greatest is, this album's Happier Than Ever. It is kind of Billie's All Too Well. It's an interesting track in her discography when you compare it to and consider the fact that one of the singles off of Happier Than Ever, Your Power, was a song about the phenomenon of older men taking advantage of younger women in relationships. Like, for me personally, when the news of her and Jesse Rutherford dating came out, I was a bit like, girl, you wrote Your Power. What's happening here? I obviously did not judge her or blame her. I judged him and blamed him. But it was interesting having the context of the fact that she literally had just written and released a song about the exact thing that she was getting into. But then on this album with The Greatest and Bittersweet, which I will talk about, we get more context into the complex emotions and feelings she was having, getting into this relationship, being in the relationship, and then getting out of it. I mean, we get that on the whole album, to be honest. And I actually think it's really great of Billie to have, a song like Your Power in her discography, and then also have a song like The Greatest and Bittersweet and whatever, which kind of shows the aftermath and afterthoughts after experiencing it herself. And, I'm pretty sure that she has experienced it with other people in the past, when you listen to some of her stuff off of her first album, when you listen to the lyrics. But this time it was incredibly publicly after she released a song about the exact phenomenon. And I think it's really important because no one can live life in black and white. She obviously says on the closing track Blue, I try to live my life in black and white, but I'm so blue. And I just think it's really brave of her and also important for young women to have that kind of example that you can be aware of, X, Y, and Z, but still get hurt. So as I said, The Greatest kind of feels like an afterthought, a look at the situation as a whole and kind of recounting the general overarching feelings and just experiences of that. Track 9, Bittersweet, however, is a bit more specific. It seems to really be the representation of her being torn about whether or not she should get into something that she has very publicly kind of spoke against. In the song Bittersweet, you can almost feel her gears in her head grinding up against each other. And that's what the song gives sonically as well, which is really nice. It makes the message and just tone of the song incredibly clear. Speaking of sonically, the synths in this track, ooh, synth me away. And the synthy outro on this track, similarly to the skinny violin outro, is the chorus melody of the next and closing track, Blue. And it kind of seamlessly leads into it, which is really nice. I think Blue is a perfect album closer. It's an insanely written song. And on that, it's two old unreleased songs of Phineas's and Billie's that they kind of mesh together to create the base, at least, for this song. Which definitely makes sense after hearing that fact, because there are so many different vibes vibes in the song, yet it does somehow work and is actually quite striking. It also reminds me of Goodbye, the closer off of When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And that she references all of the tracks on this album in the closing track, whether lyrically or through a sonic motif. And I feel like that's a nice ode to the debut that made Billie the Billie we know today. This brings me to the fact that almost every song on this album has a sort of switch up. Sometimes it's simply a beat switch, but it's often more, and it is definitely more effective on certain songs over others. Firstly, I already mentioned Skinny with its violin outro that I do wish was introduced in the song a bit earlier, or at least had a clearer transition. It just does feel a little misplaced, other than the fact that it is, in the melody of a song to come, but you don't really, especially on a first listen, you don't know that. However, the transition into Lunch from the very, very end of Skinny is so good, because basically the very beginning of Lunch is actually at the tail end of Skinny, so it leads right into it. And I do appreciate that in Skinny she talks about the internet needing something to eat and somebody needing to feed it, and then she's like, here you go, lunch. That's pretty fucking good. Lunch is obviously an instant classic, a hit, an incredibly written, gay, sapphic pop song. Just like the chorus, I could eat that girl for lunch, and she dances on my tongue, tastes like she might be the one. Yeah, it's giving Billie could have written Romeo and Juliet, but Shakespeare could not have written that verse. And then the production, her vocals. I bought you something rare and I left it under Claire. Oh my God. I'm fine. I just happened to be born in the right generation. The instrumentation, the piano, and then the outro production. Sheesh. I could eat that girl for lunch. And it ends up landing on the big picture of the album switch ups as one of the least contrasting and smoothest ones, just behind the track right after it, Chihiro, which in my opinion is the best track developmentally on the album. The bass line carries the song. I'm sorry. It's such an interestingly written song, super unique song structure. Just when you think the song has kind of reached its natural end, she comes in, and that's when you found me. Boom. It's the best kind of whiplash. And I really love hearing some Phineas backing vocals. L'amour de ma vie does not contain the smoothest switch up, but it's kind of my fave anyways. That dance beat with the auto-tune. Ooh. You wanted to keep it. I'm sorry, but I'm sad. I love the extended version too. She drops some tea in that. And I love how the beginning of the song is her saying, I'm confessing that I told a lie. And then she hints at the fact that, he lied to her with the, you said you never fall in love again because of me, and then you moved on immediately. It's just very clever. And then how the end is her relaying a conversation, seemingly with Devin Carlson, Jesse Rutherford's ex pre-Billie, and how she's like, we're so glad it's over now. You were so mediocre. And we're both so pretty, and you fucked it with both of us. Such a pity. Work. I appreciate the track listing here as well, as this track comes right after Wildflower, which is about the ex in question, Devin, that she apparently always had in the back of her mind while she was dating Jesse. And I'm sorry for the speculation or whatever. People get weird about that these days. We haven't been speculating, always, constantly, whatever. Anyways. But you have to understand that the tea adds context, and it makes some things, lyrics make sense that wouldn't otherwise make sense. Also, I'm sorry, but Devin's company is literally Wildflower Cases. The song Wildflower itself is interesting, as it does introduce the content of the switch up before, the switch up happens. Then it goes silent and comes back in, and I'm not sure it's totally effective or necessary. I do like it, especially with the vocal effects, but I don't love it, and every time I listen to it, it does feel a bit unfinished to me. Speaking of heavy effect use, the Diner is a super interesting, sonically borderline Halloween and creepy track that seems to be written from the perspective of her stalker, or a stalker, but then it's also a little gay because Billie's saying you could be my wife. So that's a fun little double meaning. I do think, however, that the effect usage in this song is a bit overblown, but then again, I do always end up kind of bopping to it. So I don't know, maybe Phineas and Billie, know what they're doing. My favorite track on the album, and probably my favorite Billie track ever, is Birds of a Feather, track 4. It is such a gorgeous love song. It is a timeless, perfect track. The instrumentation and production and her vocals, mwah, a million chef's kisses. To be honest, the song exceeds Billie and Phineas excellence. It's musical excellence. So overall, this is probably personally my favorite Billie album, and potentially her best. There are a few moments, as I mentioned, where I'm I don't know, and it can feel a bit derivative at times, but those moments are quickly forgotten and, to be honest, overshadowed by the general slay of the project. The album as a whole is a great representation of her now very public bisexuality. The title of the album is obviously a direct reference to that. I just really think that her and Phineas made something kind of timeless and classic here, similarly to her first project, and we all know how that went for her. So yeah, I think the sibling duo slayed once again, but in a very real way this time, not just in a cute way, how happier than ever kind of was. So I'm gonna give this album an 8. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a like and absolutely subscribe. Follow me on Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok, all linked below. Make sure to check out my Song of the Week series on YouTube Shorts that comes out every Saturday. And FYI, I'm going to Europe for 2 weeks. By the time this video is out, I will be on a plane. So for the next few weeks, I won't be doing any album reviews, but I'll do my songs of the week, and maybe I'll post like little YouTube shorts like on my like initial thoughts once like new albums come out, because like the new Charlie album comes out while I will be there, and I am seeing her Primavera. So I will be seeing 360 when you're in the mirror, you're just looking at me live. Okay, I'm done bragging. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe, follow me. Bye.